Always lively and never rehearsed. We call it Moral Side of the News, and we're glad you're alongside again this week. I'm John Blim with the WHAS Crusade for Children. With me, as always, is a distinguished panel this week. Dr. Jamesetta Ferguson, St. Peter's United Church of Christ, and MOLO Village CDC. Rabbi Emerita Gaylia Rooks, the Temple, and Father Tony Smith from the Archdiocese of Louisville. So welcome to you, panel. Gun violence tops our program again this week. First, 3 police officers and a canine dog were killed by a barrage of gunfire attempting to serve a warrant at a home in eastern Kentucky. Second, a gunman opened fire on a July 4th parade in Highland Park, Illinois. 7 were killed and more than 3 dozen injured. Police arrested a 21-year-old man who has confessed to opening fire from a business rooftop. So turning to our panel, on Moral Side of the News panel, this is becoming a far too regular topic on our program.
Well, we did take a little baby step. It was a step forward, but not as much as certainly I had hoped for, with a bipartisan agreement to at least move a little forward on gun safety laws. I have to say it was very disappointing, actually, to me. I can't remember the exact number, but the wide majority, the vast majority of even members of the NRA support universal background checks. I don't know why that wasn't, anyway, all different kinds of things. But we did take a step in the right direction. We closed the boyfriend loophole, which in Floyd County, the 3 officers who were killed and the canine officer dog, that was a domestic violence issue. And so under the new law, perhaps he would not have been able to legally obtain a firearm.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with what you're saying there, except to the fact that a lot of what he would not possibly not be able to buy the gun, et cetera. My concern, first off, let me say this, as a gun owner, long barrel, short barrel, et cetera, I think most owners recognize the issue we have, the obscenity of what's been happening. And we like to do something as well. But it's the same argument people have said before. If you look at, you mentioned taking a little bitty step forward, but I would suggest to you that every little bitty step forward that they talked about in the last weeks or so is already on the books. It's nothing new.
They have changed things.
They changed it, but it's on the state level that the issue is. For instance, the federal government has put out, regulations that still are requiring someone. For instance, he couldn't buy that rifle if he wasn't 21 years old. I mean, that's federal law. He can buy a gun when he's 18 years old, but not the federal gun. No, not federal laws. So I would say that my comment to you is I support you and what you're saying. Yes, I think as a gun owner, I think there's too many guns out there, too many guns in the hands of people who should not have them. But the issue is, what do we do about it? And I would concur with you that we need to do something about it. But now there's lots and lots of difficulties on it. This issue of gun control in the States is almost an equivalent of the abortion issue type thing, dividing the country. But
it's interesting that you raise abortion, because all these people who are so supposedly pro-life, and when we talk about death penalty, and I know that you, Tony, are against the death penalty, as am I, but a lot of people are pro-death penalty, but still call themselves pro-life. And they say, well, but that's innocent life. And I would say that the people who were massacred at Highland Park were definitely innocent people.
Correct, but let's be careful about generalizations, though, Gaylia. I mean, what happened was an obscenity. It's a failure in our humanity. It does say we have a long way to go. My main issue, I still say to you before, I would give up my guns the moment the Supreme Court declares it not to be our right to have that. But that's the issue, that Second Amendment type thing. We need to review that, to look at that, to adjust that, and put it on the ballot. Let the country say whether or not we still accept what it was in the Constitution. But if you look at the laws on the land, there are ways of getting around it, but there are also laws that are not being adjudicated, et cetera, on the state level. You look at the the number of deaths and things of this nature. But again, I just want to say to you, I support you, but let's be careful about what we're saying, and let's look at, since we are supposedly a country of law, let's do it based upon the law, not what we think, not a reaction, but a true response, thought out and agreed upon response. I would accept that.
My concern with all of this is that mental health has become the catch-all. And there are evil people that are doing a lot of this that are not, they're sinful, but not necessarily mentally ill. Yet we want to throw all of that and make that the excuse instead of dealing with the real issue. And for me, the real issue is, I don't want to take away anybody's Second Right Amendment, but there's no reason for us to have war type guns available for everyday people, because they are the ones that those type of weapons are the ones that are doing the most killing. And when killing destroys a person where you can't even recognize who that person is or has been, then that's an issue. Why do we need that type of weaponry held by everyday Americans?
Right. I've said many times, it's not sporting to use high-powered military-grade weapons to go hunting.
Well, let me respond, if I may. First off, military grade, high powered, et cetera. That's why I say we need to know what we are talking about. And that type of weaponry, as you call it, is it constitutionally allowable? I don't know. But remember, under the Clinton administration, Obama administration, they had a gun control law, as it were, which was not repeated. Why? Because, to be honest, they couldn't define their terms.
And yet violent mass shootings went down significantly when those laws, yes, they did, and they went back up again immediately when the law was repealed.
Well, but you say militarized guns. My comment again, as I said, I used deer mounts behind me here. What I used to hunt squirrel, and my squirrel gun is something that would look like what Arnold Schwarzenegger would carry around in his next movie. Militarization is the caliber, yes, but what do you mean for instance, high velocity ammunition, whatever? That's all.
Rounds.
Yeah, how do you? We need to come to an agreement first off on a definition of what's an assault rifle.
Okay.
Because there is no current definition that accepts. This is why the Clinton and the Obama gun control law went out. They couldn't define what even the court said, you can't tell me what you're talking about. So if you can't tell me what you're talking about, how can you deny it? Remember, from a moral perspective, positive law and negative law. Negative law is very, very limiting. It has to be very concise and precise. And the more you're precise and concise, you open up avenues around what you're trying to deny. But I agree with you. I look upon, even in the hunting scenarios, the people who should have these guns should not have them out in the woods. If you know what you're doing, you should be able to harvest an animal with humanely with very limited. But to say that this caliber is intended to kill, et cetera, to maim and whatever, I don't know. I'm not sold on that totally yet. It's a tragedy. That's, again, I know it's a bad analogy, but it's the same like with automobiles, et cetera. There are more people killed by automobiles, yes, than by guns, yes. And those who are in automobile accidents are mangled beyond belief as well. So
automobiles are very carefully regulated. You have to pass tests to prove you know how to drive one. It's a dangerous thing, yes.
Yes, but
automobiles
are not a right. You have no right to own an automobile.
Okay, let me interject with a follow-up question here. All right, what if you put your clergy hat on and you look at the family unit, you look at social media, you look at video games or other influences, what do you think has contributed to this kind of behavior by people like the Highland Park shooter, who was known as a loner? We've heard that before.
I think the valuation of human life, as we've said here, not just the whole thing about abortion, whatever, but Racial issues, same way devaluation of life. We tend not to see our brother and sister as brother and sister, as the scriptures command of us. So, but I think that's, to me, that's one of the bottom lines.
And yet, this has been argued against me before, but I'm going to say it again. Other countries have these violent video games and violent movies and everything, and don't have anywhere near the amount of mass shootings that we have. So I do think that that plays a part of it. But you know, if every gun had to be licensed and had to have a serial number and had to, you know, one of the things that you said, Tony, is that they didn't make enough progress, that we agree that they didn't make enough progress with this new bipartisan initiative. One of the things that they did was say, I don't know why they didn't just push it to age 21. Most of Americans believe you shouldn't have a right to have a gun until you're 21. You can't drink till you're 21, so it seems to me you shouldn't be able to have a gun till you're 21.
Well,
but one of the things
that is the law,
right? Well, but one of the things they did do was require stricter background checks for 18 to 21-year-olds. So clearly they recognized that problem, but they weren't able to deal with it. And I agree with you. I'm not sure how I would define, and I'm not an expert in this field by any means, but if they can't get together in a room and define what they mean by weapons of mass shootings, I mean, if only one bullet can come out per pulling of the trigger, minimally, we could agree on that.
All right, joining us now on our program, Moral Side of the News, we welcome Reverend Clay Calloway, West Louisville Ministers Coalition. Your thoughts on the two incidents of guns in Eastern Kentucky and Highland Park, Illinois, the killings in those locations?
Guns, more guns. It's the, that should be the national bird, national symbol. We need to just go ahead and retire the eagle and let the gun be the national symbol for the United States of America. As Gaylia so often says, and I agree, how many times, just take a wild guess, Gaylia, how many times we've discussed this on the moral side? 20, 30, 40, 50, 100, it's too many to count. And whatever this number is, we will continue to count even beyond here. Sad to say, in this particular case is a bit different in that in Kentucky, it was 3 police officers that were killed. Mm-hmm. So in a rural area, so that just takes the concern a little bit different, in a different direction. And typically, when law enforcement officers are injured, then the elected officials tend to take a little bit different position. Children being killed, sad to say, is not enough. But when a law enforcement officer is a victim of gun violence, then it tends to get the attention of elected officials in a unique way. So here we are again, Gaylia. It's sad and it's bad, but we hope that this might be a tipping point. Even when children are not, when law enforcement officers are killed, then it may get some attention.
I mean, even with that, he did not use a high-powered or high magazine weapon to kill the police officers. And so, I mean, we know that there are going to be those shootings, but the shootings that seem to need the most attention are those that are using those military style weapons. And something needs to be addressed regarding those types of weapons. And when there's a pattern where those that are doing the killing are young men from 18 to 21, that needs to be dealt with. You can't ignore the statistics there, and we continue to make it a mental health issue. We continue to make it a Second Amendment rights issue. all of those things in my mind are excuses. We continue to make excuses so that we can continue to allow this type of carnage to continue on. And I agree with you, Gaylia. I don't understand why this happens in the United States and not in any other country in the world, but the United States. And but that just speaks to people in power making those decisions that are affecting those that are least in power. And I would venture to say that and I wouldn't want this on anybody. I wouldn't want this type of problem on my worst enemy. But if this were to happen to some of these folk who are making the decisions, if they were suffered some of the same anguish that some of these other families are suffering, then perhaps they would get their, let me put it the nice way, perhaps they would start to pay attention and do something about it.
I would agree with you on that. The issues that we have there, but again, we're a country of law, supposedly. No, that so it's incumbent upon us then to put people into office who will begin to call, like as you know, as you said, Gay, you put a number of people in a room and don't let them out of the room until they come up with definitions that can be adjudicated or whatever. But no, that's the whole. I still, again, for Clay's benefit, I've always said I think we should really review the Second Amendment and see how it is apropos or not apropos to the modern times, because what they had in the revolutionary times and the idea of the militia is totally different, etc. But our view of the Second Amendment, what it says, is not apropos as opposed to what the United States Supreme Court says it is. And unfortunately, they're the ones that have ruled constantly about the right. Again, I say this as a member of the group who owns weapons, etc. Most of us are good citizens, law-abiding, etc. It's just these wild idiots out there, as you say. And I do think there is some mental illness there, even though it's a matter of sin and human consciousness, as you said. But we do need to. But then, how do you do that? Like what you say, I've heard you say, Jamesetta, something must be done. But what is that something? We're trying to get a hold of. What is that something?
There are many some things that can be done.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And so we get people who would suggest some of those some things.
But when our politicians default everything that after the 4th of July killing, every politician spoke and said it was because of mental illness.
No. Marjorie Taylor Greene, I can't believe I'm saying this. She thinks that it was a conspiracy of the left.
She's mentally ill.
It all happened during the 4th of July, which is the start of MAGA month. She's giving a whole month to Trump. And that it was to make the Republicans look bad.
But I do think we need, possibly, as Clay was saying, not to make the gun the emblem of the United States, but at least to make that a prime issue that needs to be examined, really, and not reacted to, but responded to in a very, legal way.
The way to deal with this issue, because the politicians that are in office now are not dealing with it. The way to deal with it is at the ballot box. But, people are so lethargic right now regarding the political system. Getting people to vote is going to be a real challenge. Because, they have the attitude that nothing's going to happen regardless as to who they put in office.
Well, the recent Supreme Court decision, the activist court, is proof positive that elections do have consequences. When you make certain elections over time, the claims that the Supreme Court is neutral and is not activist, it was proven recently not to be true. You elect the people that select the judges. So that's how the process works.
Yeah.
And getting back to the Second Amendment, Brother Tony, the Second Amendment is probably one of the simplest of all the amendments. Of all of them, it's only in one sentence. And it's as simple as you can, as rudimentary as you can read it and get it and break it down in its parts. But it's a matter of whenever they mention the Second Amendment, they never mention the first part of the Second Amendment. Never.
Mm-hmm.
They skip to the part they like. They skip to the second part of the Second Amendment and overlook the first part of the First Amendment, of the Second Amendment. So it starts off with a regulated militia and then continues from there.
Clay, we've had this discussion before. As I keep saying to you, you're free to have your own recommendation, but it's not yours, Clay Calloway. It's not Tony Smith.
No, it's just read it. You don't have to interpret it. Just read it. You don't have to interpret
it. It is not
our.
We are not part of the Supreme Court, and whether you like the Supreme Court or not, I have difficulty with it too. But it is the final judgment of the law of the land. So we can sit here.
Nothing's final. They overturned Roe versus Wade. Nothing's final. They proved that.
But who determined and overturned was the Supreme Court. They are the final rule.
Right. So they can overrule anything.
Well, you can say what you want to say, but right now, to this point in time, the Supreme Court has constantly come down upon the right for those, again, when those gun owners like myself look at it and shake our heads sometimes as how they came to that
change. This is proof positive with recent Roe decision. It can change with the next election cycle.
Well, it can change, possibly change, but those are futurables. You can't make moral decisions based upon futurables. What might happen?
Okay, well, let's move on to our second topic, which is about judges, okay? Led by Governor Andy Beshear, Kentucky Democrats are aghast by President Joe Biden's intent to nominate pro-life Republican Chad Meredith to the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Kentucky. Some presume the president struck a deal with Kentucky Senator Mitch McConnell. Governor Beshear says it is, quote, indefensible. Turning to our panel, how do you feel about this announcement, the way it came about this week?
I agree with the governor. I agree with his assessment.
Indefensible. And how President Biden could trust Mitch McConnell to keep his word if they did indeed strike a deal. I mean, he has shown again and again and again. I mean, the Republicans don't fight fair, and the Democrats keep losing issues and elections because we don't stoop to their tactics. But to trust their tactics, I agree with Governor Beshear. Indefensible. I can't imagine what President Biden was thinking.
I'm not one in favor of abortion, of course, but that being said, I don't see how this differs from any other judge. You know, look at the history of the Congress and how they hold up judges they don't like and how they proceed with judges they do care for. You know, Clay, you said it's politics, and this is one political gamemanship, maybe, I don't know. But hopefully we can't say, you know, if you swear the oath of the office, you're going to just be totally neutral from them. You can't be totally neutral. Even the Supreme Court, as we said, we've seen that. So I don't know. I'm just, I'm hearing people react. And I don't know, again, I keep using that word react versus respond. So anyway, that's my comment. I'm still up in the air about it.
Yeah, I don't really have any thoughts about it. I mean, our president is making some decisions that I'm not sure that I agree with. And I agree with what Andy Beshear did as far as releasing the information, because I think it's important for us to know what decisions are being made, because they are going to be, this particular appointment, I believe, is going to be detrimental to the state of Kentucky. And we need that information so that we can challenge in whatever way that we can to correct this potential appointment. To do nothing means that we are going to be willing to accept whatever happens with, I believe, with Roe versus Wade, and we can't allow that. We know that as a poor state, there are a lot of people, families that are going to be affected by the decision of the Supreme Court, and to have a state Supreme Judge that is going to work in favor of work against pro-choice is going to be detrimental to the state of Kentucky.
And especially women of color and poor women, because wealthy women will just go to some other more civilized place,
right?
State in this country, or even before Roe v. Wade, another country that is more committed to women's rights.
Especially, I mean, Kentucky is virtually a poor state. And when you're talking about women in the Appalachia or whatever, they're going to resort to going back to the back rooms to get the procedures done, which is going to increase the amount of death to women and families. And so we don't want that. I am pro-choice. Would I agree to an abortion? I would not, but I don't want that choice taken away for those families, those women that must make the difficult decision.
And one more thing, from a religious viewpoint and the separation of religion and politics, or church and state as it's called, in strict Jewish law, if a pregnancy was threatening a mother's life, she would be obligated to terminate that pregnancy, because under Jewish law, until they argue whether the head crowns or 51% of the baby is born, but clearly during the birthing process, that is when life begins. And you cannot sacrifice the potential life of a fetus, I mean, the real life of the mother for the potential life of a fetus. And so to make abortion illegal in the United States or in any given state would infringe on my religious beliefs. So.
It wouldn't infringe upon others' beliefs, though. That's the problem.
Right. But
and
that's why it should
the
be
clock on the wall tells me we're out of time for this edition of Moral Side of the News. Thank you to our panel, Dr. Jamesetta Ferguson, Rabbi Emerita Gaylia Rooks, Reverend Clay Calloway, and Father Tony Smith. You can catch this program again if you'd like. Just go to YouTube and search for Moral Side of the News, and you can see this episode or any other episode from the past year. Until next week, thank you, panel, for your time, and we'll see you again. So long. Thanks for making the 69th annual WHAS Crusade for Children a big success. But you can still join in on the fun. Send your donation to WHAS Crusade for Children, 520 West Chestnut Street, Louisville, Kentucky, 40202. That's 520 West Chestnut Street, Louisville, Kentucky, 40202. Also, go online to WHAScrusade.org. That's WHAScrusade.org, and see the many ways you can help change a child's life. We'll be back again next week with an all-new conversation on Moral Side of the News. Please join us then. So long for now.